Advisory Board is truly special because it's our 25th annual breakfast. On behalf of my co-chairs, Rod Yancey, Cassie Savage, the MLK Breakfast Committee members Henry Chips Norman and Norma Johnson, E.C.A.P Advisory Board Chair Lovely Phillips, and the members of the E.C.A.P Advisory Board, I thank you for your continued support of E.C.A.P and your participation in the E.C.A.P sponsored events. I'd like to present now co-chair Cassie Savage.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome once again. At this time, we're going to start right on with our program. At this time, I'd like to call Gina Billups up to the podium. She's going to lead us in the national anthem and the Negro spiritual national
We welcome now Boy Scouts of America, Troop 353 of Eastchester in the presentation of our colors and reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance.
Color Guard, advance. Would everyone please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Let's go outside. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ready, two. Color Guard, post the colors.
of Bronxville.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, with hearts filled with so many emotions, we come before you today to remember your servant, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. He was one who heard your call to service and listened to your voice for wisdom. He was one who spoke your words of truth, encouragement, and prophecy. He was one who cherished your presence and love and was obedient even unto death. For his life, we give you thanks. And this morning, as we honor him on this, the 25th annual breakfast, our hearts also turn to those in need, not only in our communities of Eastchester, Tuckahoe, and Bronxville, but throughout our country and world, most especially for our sisters and brothers in Haiti. Lord, may your healing, restoring, and bountiful hand provide for all in need. May we be the instruments which bring healing and hope in the midst of devastation and disaster. Lord, bless this program today. All who participate, as well as all who've worked so hard in its preparation. Bless the food we receive and all who have prepared it. May this morning help to inspire us to continue with the dream of equality for all people. To your glory and in your name's sake we pray. Amen. Amen.
Now it's time for breakfast.
Someone that I have known all my life. She's a cousin of mine. She's a very good friend. She's also one of my mentors. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Jacqueline Monroe McCrae was born and raised in the city of Mount Vernon, New York. The youngest of 6 children, born to Fairleigh and Yulie Young Monroe. She was educated in the Mount Vernon schools and graduated from Mount Vernon High School. In 1967, she graduated from the former Berkeley Secretarial School in White Plains, New York, and began working. Her career as an administrative assistant gave her the opportunity to work in the private sector, television broadcasting, the medical community, the legal field, and in the early 70s, she taught secretarial procedures and property programs in Brooklyn, New York. After staying home for 6 years to raise her children and to assist in the care of her elderly parents, she began to look for work and landed at the Tuckahoe High School as a secretary to the principal. She served in that capacity for 21 years and retired in 2008. Jackie, as she is more affectionately known as, is a longtime member of the Macedonia Baptist Church in Mount Vernon, New York, where over the years she has worked in many church ministries, but always in the choir, and presently sings with the Voices of Praise. She has served on the boards of the Eastchester Community Action Program, the former Family Consultation Services in Eastchester, and the Board of Trustees of the Tuckahoe Library. In 1996, she was a recipient of the Eastchester Community Action Program Community Service Award. Jackie is married to Edward McCrae and is the mother of 2 lovely daughters, Camira McCrae and Camille McCrae Durham, and she is the proud grandmother of Danny Oakley. The McCraes have resided in Tuckahoe for the past 25 years. I want us all to bring a warm welcome to a cousin of mine, a good friend, and a mentor, Miss Jackie McCrae.
chips. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Oh, you can do better than that. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. That's better. Yeah, you know what we do. You know how I do. Because, you know, we have a tendency to come to these things and sit down and we don't know the people sitting with us. Make sure that you know everybody at your table. Introduce yourself to them. That's right. See, some of you children, you didn't know people. That always amazes me, how we go to these things and we sit down at a table and we don't know the people sitting there next to us. So I think you should always introduce yourself. They told me some things to do to start this off. But you know, they knew when they put me here that I was going to do what I want to do, the way I want to do it. Okay? So I'm going to say what I have to say first to get it out of the way. And we've come here today, as we've done for the past 25 years, to celebrate and commemorate the life of a man of great strength and wisdom, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. As written on the webpage about.com, Dr. King, all his life, espoused the principles of equality and peace. However, each year, we and many others around the nation seem to turn his life into one phrase, I have a dream. But there was so much more to this powerful man. I can recall very vividly the emotion and the call to service that he evoked. Dr. King made the common man on the street feel as if he were a giant. When he spoke, it made all of us stand up and pay attention. He made us all feel that we had the power to change things, that we just needed to use the God-given power within us to make this nation live out its dream. His larger-than-life voice spoke to us philosophically, emotionally, spiritually, and with such passion that we actually believed that we could, and eventually we did, change America and the world. And so we come here today just to salute Dr. King and tell him, job well done. Now our mission should be to honor Dr. King today, but we should also be about the business of continuing to educate the children about following his lead. Dr. King gave substantial, committed service to this country. He said about passion, a man who won't die for something is not fit to live. And about faith, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. And about strength, he said, the ultimate test of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and moments of convenience, but where he stands in moments of challenge and moments of controversy. So we need to teach our children about these things and help them to become knowledgeable of their community. Then they can scrutinize, question, and challenge our leaders to make it the best that it can be. Now to the children who are here today, pay attention, because from time to time, someone is going to give you a quote from Dr. King. And you need to take those quotes and marinate on them, and hopefully encompass them into your life. So, the first quote is, every man must decide whether he will walk in the light of creative altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness. In other words, you have the choice of being unselfish and creative about your life's work, and then attempt to make this world a better place. Or you can be selfish and self-centered and deal with your own well-being. And that way, only you get the glory, or get to move ahead. You can think about your community. I told you this last year, it's about service. And it's about your community, and we should all be about that. So now, without further ado, we're going to start our program. And because of their various commitments, we have several of our political leaders who are going to come forward in this order, and they're only going to take 2 minutes, because if they don't, I'm not going to ring a bell, but I'm certainly going to put my hand up. Congresswoman Nita Lowey, Senator Jeff Klein, Assemblywoman Amy Paulin, and County Legislator Vito Pinto, in that order.
Well, if I take less than a minute, Jacqueline, I think I can get a gold star. So I'm going to be very, very brief, because I appreciate you're giving me the opportunity to extend greetings. As Winston Ross knows, I've been working with the Community Action Program in Westchester and throughout New York State for a very, very long time. So I just want to thank you, thank all of you for your leadership. There are many people in this community, my colleagues in elected office, who work very hard to make this a better place. There are many people in community action who work hard to make our community a better place. But there are many people who teach in our schools, work on a whole range of community programs, and wake up every day saying, what can I do to make this country a better place for us to live? And I know, Jacqueline, you referenced our beautiful children who are here, and I hope they're working so hard in school so they can get good grades and make sure that you can fulfill your dreams and make important contributions to our community. And as we wake up every day and hear about the terrible, terrible tragedy and loss of life in Haiti, we are so grateful for what we have here. And I know that there are members of our military, there are 10,000 non-governmental organizations, including Doctors Without Borders. There are members of the UN who are working every day to save lives. And I just want to say that if you have any time this afternoon, there is a group at 501 Nepperham Avenue in Yonkers in a warehouse that is packing up containers to send over to Haiti. So, I think I've gone over a minute. Thank you. For giving me the opportunity. Thank you for all you do. That's a professional proclamation.
To save time for Jacqueline, I was on the on-deck circle. And I want to thank each and every one of you for year after year always honoring the memory of Dr. King. I think Jacqueline really said it best. We sometimes lose sight of Dr. King's vision. It was about community, which is certainly appropriate now, because an organization like E.C.A.P during these tough fiscal times is something that's very, very important. Making sure that our senior citizens come about their golden years in comfort and dignity, making sure that our young people have after-school programs, summer camp, and that's why I was very proud this year during the summer to present a $10,000 grant to E.C.A.P for their summer program. But I think also to keep Dr. King's dream alive, we still have unfinished business. I think he would have, been happy with some of the progress, like the first African-American president. But there's still more that we need to do. When you look at our foreclosure crisis, and you look at African Americans are 4 times more likely to be in foreclosure, that means there's more to be done. When you see that young people, African Americans, Latinos, still don't score as high on standardized tests, there's more work to be done. When you look at who's being impacted by this economic crisis, and you see who actually is unemployed, and you see it's African Americans disproportionately, that means there's more work to be done. So I think all of us have to really, join forces and always understand a very simple truth. We always have to remember who we are and where we came from. And I think to keep the memory of Dr. King alive, all of us, each and every one of us, hand in hand, have to finally reach the top of the mountain together. Thank you all very, very much.
great honor to be among you today. Dr. Martin Luther King was more than just a voice for tolerance, respect, and racial harmony. He was a historic voice of leadership, and the values he preached and dreams he shared inspire us to this day unchanged from the days he challenged a nation to live up to its finest ideals: equality, justice, and opportunity for all. Today, America celebrates his unforgettable life and honors the work he did to bring our citizenry closer together and ensure that all Americans can fulfill their own dreams. It's been 42 years since Dr. King was senselessly killed, but his words still resonate. And his impact on today's society is unmistakable. Without a doubt, our children have a better understanding of his principles of nonviolence and respect for all races, religion, and creeds. Dr. King viewed those ideals as necessary conditions to achieving the real goal: equality and equal opportunity for all, so that all Americans achieve the American dream. While it's evident that the world has changed and that the civil rights movement of the 60s and the decades after brought a new, previously unrealized era of tolerance, growth, and opportunity, much remains to be done. His struggle continues today, and it can be seen in the eyes of victims who have been overlooked, in communities and schools that have been underserved, and on the faces of children and families who have been underprivileged and forgotten. We still have children without health insurance, schools without adequate resources, and working families that can't afford to stay in their homes because of rising taxes. We still have discrimination, we still have racism. That's our battle. Today and together, we renew our commitment to that battle. Today and together, we beat back the cynicism, quiet the critics, and strive for real change to better people's lives. Thank you again. It's been an honor to be here. Have a great morning, and I thank you so much for making me a part of it.
Good morning, all. I bring greetings from our newly elected county executive, Rob Astorino, and Jenkins, our new chair, and the rest of the board. And I certainly want to recognize the mother of community action programs, my former colleague, recently retired Lois Bronze. Thank you for joining us. We go back a long way. And as my daughter gave me a sign, I'm not 70, I'm 18 with 58 years of experience. And I feel that's the way we ought to really remember Dr. Martin Luther King. I was telling Jackie just yesterday, after all these years, I recently found out that their birth names were Michael King. And Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King changed his name to Martin Luther after the reformists from Germany. And also found out that for a $25 speeding ticket, actually wasn't speeding, it was lack of registering his license after a sit-in. Dr. Martin Luther King spent 6 months of hard labor in the Reidsville Penitentiary in Georgia. And he wrote a letter from there to his wife. And from that moment on, events took place. And I certainly welcome all of my colleagues from education, from the Tuckahoe, Eastchester, and Bronxville school districts, who have worked so well together to educate our children and to teach each other what it means to be a community. And my colleagues in local government, on the town and the villages, who've also continued to work so closely. But more importantly, it's people from Tuckahoe who have made our community rich, and the historic events that have occurred throughout time that make Dr. Martin Luther King's dream a reality. Education is important. Ensure that our children are taught to live and work and play together. And we will be ensured that our lives will reach the goals that we all achieved in memory of a great man, a great fighter, who did not sit back idly, but who believed in education as a threshold of success in life. Thank you very much. Enjoy the
Okay, next on our program, we have a musical selection coming from the Children's Choir of Shiloh Baptist Church and Emmanuel AME Church in Tuckahoe, New York. The children are our future. And we need to encourage them as much as we possibly can. Okay, at this time we're going to have an inspirational reading. The Caged Bird by Maya Angelou. Our speakers will be Ginger Pierce, Brianna, and Jasmine Drew.
A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and flows downstream till the current ends, and dips his wings in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing.
The caged bird sings a fearful trail of things unknown, but known for still. And his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom.
The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on the dawn-bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams, his shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing.
The caged bird sings a beautiful tale of things unknown, but long for still. His tune is heard on the distant hill, where the caged bird sings of freedom. Thank you.
Give them another hand. It's not the easiest thing to get up in front of people and speak. Now I'm going to change the program around a little bit because after sitting and talking to Reverend Moore, I realized that he has to leave us. He has another engagement. And so I'm going to introduce Reverend Moore at this time. Now, when I was asked to serve as Mistress of Ceremonies, I wasn't informed who the speaker of the hour would be. So when my cousin Chip, Henry Norman, came to my home a few days ago to give me a program, he said, and oh, by the way, here's a bio of the speaker. So he gave me this paper, which is a brief outline of our speaker's accomplishments. Well, I was surprised. Actually, I said, Darren's the speaker? I don't need this little piece of paper. That's my son. I know what to say about him. When Reverend Moore was our featured speaker a few years back, I introduced him at that time, and I told you how, among other things, I recalled he and his brothers practicing church. He was the preacher, Brian was the musician, Scott was the congregation, and I guess Mark must have been the nursery since he was in the crib. I told you that he served on the school board in Mount Vernon, and I believe he may have been the president at that time, I'm not sure. And I told how he was senior pastor at the Greater Centennial A.M.E. Zion Church in Mount Vernon, and a member of the United Black Clergy of Westchester, and that he was married to Davita, and the loving and caring father of Duran, Dana, and Dion. Back then, I didn't have his bio, and there were some things I left out. So this paper did come in handy. He's a graduate of Livingstone College in Salisbury, North Carolina, where he served as president of the Student Government Association, was national president of the Pre-Alumni Association of the United Negro College Fund. He received a degree in psychology from Purchase College and attends Yale University School of Divinity. He's pastored churches in Monroe and Greensboro, North Carolina, and in Indianapolis, Indiana. This paper tells of his associations and memberships in those communities, as well as those in Mount Vernon, Westchester County, and of his leadership roles in the A.M.E. Zion Church. What this paper doesn't say is that he was once the great director of the Mount Vernon Community Choir, who in its heyday headlined for the likes of John P. Key and Hezekiah Walker. Yeah, John P. and Hezekiah, they kind of came after the Mount Vernon Community Choir. But I want to tell you today that I've known Reverend Moore Darren for practically all of his life. I knew his grandmothers and his father and many of his other family members. And I know his mother, Connie Moore Farrell. Because in order for you to understand who he is, you need to know who she is. His parents divorced when he was and his brothers were young. But his mother, Connie, set about raising 4 boys in an environment that was spiraling out of control. She worked tirelessly in her nursing career. Of course, Mount Vernon back then is not as Mount Vernon is today, but the community had begun to deteriorate. And being a single parent is a trial in and of itself. But in a community that's beginning to unravel, it's a great challenge. Well, let me tell you that Connie Moore met that challenge. She met it head on. She went about her father's business and raised those 4 boys and did it well. She involved them in church. She made sure they attended church. And she made sure that they went to school. And I'm sure that wherever she is now, she's shouting, praising God for those blessings. All of her children are deeply involved in the Word of God, and they all serve in church. Correct me if I'm wrong, Reverend Moore, but 3 are pastors and 1 is an elder. What a blessing. So you see, neither Reverend Moore nor his brothers could be who they are without the love and guidance of Connie Moore. She, with God, made him who he is today. So it's my distinct pleasure to present to you the Reverend W. Darren Moore, Senior Pastor of the Greater Centennial AME Zion Church located in the city of Mount Vernon, New York, and the eldest son of Connie Moore Farrell. Reverend Moore. Please stand to your feet and receive recognition.
Good morning, everybody. I am grateful for this opportunity to share with you among so many who I have known over the years and others that I've worked with. I am so appreciative to Jackie McCray for that introduction. She gives me an introduction unlike any other, and she in fact has that right to do so because she was one of those who helped to rear me, and she still to this day is very good about giving me instructions on what to do and what not to do. And then her sister Shirley is even more direct in giving me orders. At least Jackie tries to package it nicely. Shirley just came up and said, I know you got someplace else to go, but don't give me one of those watered down messages. And so I'm going to try to do the best to be brief without it being watered down. To those who serve in leadership of this distinguished organization, including your chairwoman, Sister Phillips, and to my novel and reading partner, Lois Braun. She and I share a love of good mysteries, and she gave me a book. I think it was after our trip to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. She gave me a book that I still have to this day and I cherish. And so it's good to see each of you. To the members of Greater Centennial who are here and see not only at this table but scattered throughout the ballroom, thank you for your presence. It always helps me to have members of this congregation, my congregation, to give me a home court advantage to Sister Cheryl Walls, who's celebrating her birthday today by being here at this breakfast. And yeah, let's give that an applause. Have to do that. I do want to share with you, as I've been asked to talk about King in the context of 2010. There was a little boy who came into his father's study at home and said, "Dad, I'm bored. I want you to play some games with me." His father was at that moment engaged in a very important project, and so he said to his son, "Give me a few minutes and let me finish this project, and I'll play with you." The little boy said, "But Daddy, I'm so bored, I'm so bored." And so the father came up with what he thought was an ingenious diversion for the boy's time and attention. He reached up on the shelf and got a box that had a puzzle of the world with 1,000 pieces, you know, those type of puzzles, and handed it to his son and said, "Now son, you go and put this puzzle together, and once you have completed the puzzle, then I will be free to play with you." And so the little boy, excited about the challenge, took the box and ran out to get to work. And when the boy ran out, the father sat there a bit pleased with himself, that he knew that his son would never complete that puzzle, and certainly not within the next several hours. And so he went back to work. But indeed, in about 45 minutes, in came the son saying, "Daddy, the puzzle is complete." The father was absolutely aghast and amazed and said, "How in the world did you complete that puzzle so quickly?" And the little boy said, "Well, at first I was really confused, and there were so many pieces that were blue, I couldn't figure out which ocean they were, and others that were brown, and I didn't know what landmass they were. But when I turned the puzzle upside down, the manufacturer had stamped his label on the back. And I knew that if I put it together right on the back side, it would turn out all right on the front side." We are living in a time where it seems as though the pieces of the world have been tossed. We're living in a time when there is tragedy in Haiti, there are wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, there are nuclear threats in North Korea and Iran, there are ongoing economic crises facing the global community. And then closer to home, right here in Westchester County, we're experiencing illiteracy rates that are unacceptable. We're experiencing ongoing health care challenges. We're experiencing unacceptable violence in our communities. There's domestic violence in our homes. The pieces of the world sometimes seem upside down. But I'm convinced, my brothers and sisters, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who in fact was the greatest moral leader of the 20th century, set a pattern that will allow us to be effective even moving into a new age. I am concerned, my brothers and sisters, that we have so domesticated the memory of Dr. King that everybody can come together now and say, "I have a dream," and that everybody can come together and agree that we ought to live in a land where we're not judged by the color of our skin, but rather by the content of our character. But we also need to recognize that Dr. King in his lifetime was in fact viewed as a radical. We need to remember that the federal government and the FBI had him under surveillance. We need to remember that there were black churches that would not have him because they felt like he was rocking the boat. We need to recall that there were significant portions of the population that felt like he was a rebel rouser and even accused him of being a communist, much as some leaders today are accused of being a socialist. We need to remember that in his day, in his context, it was not easy doing what he did, saying what he said, and challenging the status quo. As was then, so is now. Because whenever you refuse to accept the status quo, you become a threat to those who are in power and who are comfortable in maintaining the systems as they are. And so we, as followers of the philosophy of King and benefits of the legacy of King, we need to embrace afresh a sense of radicalism, a sense of determination that we refuse to remain comfortable with the status quo. Dr. King says that we as a people need to first of all know who we are. Because the truth of the matter is you can do nothing for others until you first of all know who you are. I was so blessed as these children sang this morning, I am what God says I am. I can do what God says I can do. Didn't you get the sense that that young lady, as she was singing that solo, felt like she could do whatever God had for her to do? Didn't you see on the faces of those children a sense of determination and a sense of self-assurance that we can be whatever God wants us to be? That's where it starts. The question is, what happens from the time they are at this point, filled with enthusiasm and optimism and confidence? What happens in our school systems? What happens in our communities? What even happens in our homes that seems to shrivel that sense of self-confidence? What happens that seems to suck out of them the enthusiasm and the energy that it takes to be successful? Kwanzaa Kanjufu said it correctly. During the first 4 grades in school, African American boys achieve on par with African American girls and with white boys and white girls. But by the time they get into the 6th grade, there is a huge gap. It is not because they are inherently less intelligent. There is something about the milieu. There is something about the environment. It is something that needs to be analyzed both in the classroom, the schools, but as also in the homes and in the communities. We cannot be satisfied when any one of our young men or young ladies feel that somehow or another mediocrity is acceptable. We must raise the standards and we must say, you have to be what God says you can be. Dr. Martin Luther King reminded us that you've got to love who you are. I'm reminded of a story that I used to hear old preacher tell about a man who had some heart disease and had a heart attack. He died, went to heaven, but as he got to the pearly gates, he debated with St. Peter. He said, I'm only 45 years old. I'm too young to die. I really am so sorry. I repent for all of the bad choices I've made in my life. If you would just give me a little more time, I'm going to get it right. St. Peter said, well, today is just a special day. I'm going to extend to you that grace. Go ahead, I'm going to give you 20 more years of life. Go on back and live your life. And the man was back into his body, and he was just so excited about this second chance. He decided he was going to go on a diet. He lost 30 pounds, and then he got so excited. Then he felt good. He decided to get his hair colored, and he decided to get some plastic surgery done. And he left out of the hospital feeling good about himself, walked across the street and was hit by a car and died. Got to heaven, said, wait a minute, St. Peter, you told me I had 20 more years to live. And St. Peter said, is that you? We didn't recognize you. The truth of the matter is we're living in a culture, though, that unfortunately teaches each person not to be loving of who they are. We live in a celebrity culture. Look at those people who are celebrated. Few are celebrated for accomplishing any great feats. Few are celebrated like the great legislators we have represented here today who are accomplishing great things that change people's lives. I've been trying to figure out what is it that Paris Hilton does. I mean, what is it really that she does? In a day and an age like this where New York, a woman named New York has her own reality show. Who is she? What does she do? Why do we glamorize triviality? Why is it that our children get caught up in watching things like MTV Cribs? Your house is not good enough. Getting caught up in watching shows like My Sweet 16th. That obsessive focus on materialism. Bridezilla, Pimp My Ride, because we're always trying to have something that we don't have. Dr. Martin Luther King said, first of all, if you're going to be great, you have to begin by loving who you are. One of the poems he would quote so often would say, if you can't be a pine on the top of the hill, be a scrub in the valley, but be the best little scrub on the side of the hill. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. It isn't by size that you win or fail. Be the best at whatever you are. We need to say to our young people, be the best at whatever you are. I didn't have it in my notes. I didn't have it to speak, but Sister Jackie reminded me about how my mother was so determined that her sons would have more opportunity than she had. She was so determined that we would grow to appreciate the value of education. And yes, we grew up on the south side of Mount Vernon, and we grew up very poor. My mother, in fact, while she was in nursing school, did in fact receive food stamps. I know something about government cheese, you know. I know most of you don't relate to anything like that, and especially sitting at Lake Isle, you don't want to acknowledge that you know anything about that. But we know something about government cheese. I know something about having no ketchup and having to put water in the ketchup and shake it up so that you have enough. I've been there. I know something about it because my mother struggled to raise 4 boys by herself. But the truth of the matter is my mother always raised our expectations. She would never allow our poverty to become an excuse for mediocrity. We would get on a bus, on a public bus, and she'd take me and my 3 brothers, and we'd ride up Route 22, and she would point to beautiful homes that we didn't know anything about. And she would say, if you stay in school and if you study, you can have a beautiful home. You can have a great career. And today I am living in the same neighborhood that my mother pointed out to us back in my childhood. It is because she raised our expectations. And that needs to happen for every boy and every girl. They need to know that there are opportunities for them to be the best that they can be. But then Dr. King would remind us, don't become so obsessed in being the best that you can be. You do have to know who you are, but we also need to know who we are. Because Dr. King's motivating philosophy was that of the beloved community. He believed in the neighborhood of humanity. And to this day, it is amazing to me to think of the deep capacity that this man had to show love, even in the face of such vitriol, even in the face of such hatred, even in the face of having his own home bombed on at least 4 or 5 occasions, even in the face of having assassination attempts on his life, even in the face of ugliness, not just in the South, but even in the North, even in the face of being called all kinds of names. He really believed in the common humanity amongst us. He spoke again and again about the fact that we are inextricably connected one to the other. In 1961, he says, all life is interrelated. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all of us indirectly. And that's why King was able to mobilize Jews and Gentiles. That's why he was able to mobilize blacks and whites. That's why he was able to mobilize people in the north and the south, because he believed that in each one of us is the potential, when we come together, to achieve greatness. Yes, there's so much pain and sorrow and tragedy in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and throughout that nation. Haiti was a nation on the day before the earthquake that was a tragic situation. The day after the earthquake, it is all the more so, unbelievably so. But at the same time that we see such pain and such devastation and such loss, we also must be inspired by the indomitable human spirit. We also must be inspired by people from countries around the world responding in such an overwhelming way to show the love of humanity. We must be inspired by those who contribute even their little. I was with the synagogue on Friday, Westchester Reformed Temple, and one of the congregants there works in Mayor Bloomberg's office, and she told me that they had a call from someone who wanted to contribute, and she says, I'm very poor, I don't have any money to contribute, but I would like to donate my food stamps for the next month. That is, yes, what a demonstration of love, because we are all inextricably connected. You may have seen on the Today Show a young woman, Crystal Brailsford, who lost her leg in Haiti, left a leg in Haiti. But while she's laying in a hospital in Florida, her concern was not her lost leg, but the fact that she left behind so many Haitians who did not have the benefit of world-class health care that she was able to receive. And I thought to myself, we ought to elect her to the United States Senate. Because there are so many who are just concerned with holding on to what they have. And the fact that 30 million Americans go without health care is an issue that Martin Luther King would be in the streets protesting and rallying us around. And we need to recognize that health care is a moral issue of this day. It is tragic that we would become so self-centered that we would not be willing to reach out to help somebody else. Several years ago, some of you might recall, it was on CNN, there was a toddler who fell into the gorilla pen out at Brookville Zoo in Brookville, Illinois. And it was a moment of great panic and fear for those parents when their little toddler had fallen into this gorilla's pen. But there was a mother gorilla who happened to have been nursing her own baby gorilla, who took her own baby gorilla, swung it around on its back, and went over and picked up the toddler. And rather than harming the toddler, this mother gorilla coddled the toddler and protected that toddler from the other animals until the caretakers could come and rescue it. That gorilla was willing to save a child, was willing to help somebody. And that gorilla didn't have a PhD in social work. That gorilla wasn't Episcopal or Methodist. That gorilla hadn't been baptized or christened. That gorilla did not go to Concordia or to Harvard or to Howard or to Spelman. That gorilla was able to show the capacity that Dr. King would talk about when he said, if I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living will not be in vain. And you said, but Reverend Moore, you don't know what I got to deal with. I got my own issues. I got my own challenges. Well, that gorilla had a monkey on her back, but she was still able to help somebody else. We got to reach out and help one another. And then finally, Dr. King recognized something profound. You've got to know who you are. You've got to know who we are. But you need to know whose we are. I don't apologize that I'm a preacher. You knew who you were inviting when you sent the invitation because it said Reverend. And I am certainly not here to proselytize. I am not here to open the doors of the church. I am certainly not here to tell you what it is that you must believe in. But the truth of the matter is that what made Dr. Martin Luther King who he was the fact that he was a man of profound faith. He was the son of a preacher. He was the grandson of a preacher. He was the great-grandson of a preacher. Everything in him was rooted in his faith. And when he was under such attack, he recognized that if it weren't for the grace of God, he would not be where he is. I'm looking out at people who are extremely successful. You've done a good job. I applaud you. You've achieved great heights in life. But the truth of the matter is, you can testify that you didn't get here just because of how brilliant you were. In fact, if you came up in a home like I came up, you went to school not because you felt like it. You went to school because you had to go to school. But then when Sunday came, there was no such thing as sleeping in. I don't know about you, but in my house, when Sunday came, there was nothing like, I don't feel like going to church today, because my mother and my grandmother said, if you could get up and go to school on Monday, when Sunday comes in this house, everything up in this house is going to church. Because my mother would let us know, if it was not for God's grace, we would not be here. I get up in the morning, but it's the finger of God that touches me. He calls me in my right mind. He's the one that's able to put food on our table and clothes on our back. And our young people need to know that we have come this far by faith. It was the faith of our forefathers. It was the faith of our foremothers that brought us through many dangers, toils, and snares. I have already come. 'Twas grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. I am so excited, my brothers and sisters, that even in the face of the worst, God is still in charge. Yes, he is. I just believe out of the devastation of Haiti, as painful as it is today, God is going to raise up a new nation. Because when the worst happens, it doesn't mean that's the last to happen. Thank you, Dr. Martin Luther King, because you reminded us that even James Earl Ray's bullet that took your physical life could not kill your dream. When you died on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, that bullet took your life, but the dream continued, because James Earl Ray did not
You always in for a treat when he comes. I wish you could come every year. Don't you feel energized now? Don't you feel like you can go out and conquer everything now? I hope our children feel that way, because we're going to need them to accomplish that. At this time, we're going to have a musical selection by the Shiloh Baptist Men's Chorus under the direction of Richard Smith. that song. I made it through another day's journey, and I'm still here. You can look around this room, and those of you who were here last year, there's somebody that was here last year that's not here today. They didn't make it. So, you have to realize the significance of the song. I made it. I'm thankful. I don't know about the rest of you. I'm glad to be here. You know, at my church, there used to be, it was an old deacon there. And every Sunday, when church started up, we knew he was there because he was saying, it's good to be here. And that's the truth. It's good to be here. Before we go any further, I just want to remind you that the Friends of E.C.A.P is raffling off this basket over here. Those of you who did not get a raffle, and if you'd like to, raise your hand. Someone will come around and bring you the raffle tickets. They're raffling off this lovely basket here. That's to help our children again. Before Nita Lowy left, she left the congressional proclamation, and I just want to read a little bit of it, if not all of it. It says, whereas the Eastchester Community Action Program is proud to honor the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a man of peace and a man of vision, who caused the world to pause and to reflect upon the meaning of true brotherhood. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was blessed with the divine ability to rise above the mean-spirited and petty machinations of lesser men and to uplift the souls and consciences of thousands upon thousands so that they too might share his dream. Now therefore be it resolved that all homage and deference be granted to the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s beliefs, and that all good people rededicate themselves to making his dream a reality. January 18th, 2010, Nita M. Lowy, Member of Congress. She didn't get a chance to read that. At this time, we're going to call up Lovely Billups, the E.C.A.P Advisory Board Chair, who's going to introduce our dignitaries. And following that, Charlene Lambrecht, who's the E.C.A.P Area Director, will join her for the candle lighting and memorial tribute to Alma Lee Taylor and the past E.C.A.P members. Then the two of them will give their closing remarks, and then we'll be favored with the musical selection, America the Beautiful, by Gina Billups Pierce, in that order.
You've honored us with your presence, and we thank you so much for being here. But there are also those of us who are distinguished because they have gone in public service above and beyond the call of duty. And at this time, I would like to recognize three of the people that I call our local CEOs. And that is that they are the heads of the village of Bronxville, the village of Tuckahoe, and the town of Eastchester. I've asked them to very briefly be recognized and also to recognize people if they are here within their administrations. So I will start with the village of Bronxville, Mary Marvin. Could we welcome her, please? Mary, you had someone here.
Our police chief was here until he had to go off to a village meeting, but
Okay.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Mayor John Fitzpatrick of the distinguished village of Tuckahoe. Missing in action, MIA? Okay, well, Steve Eklund, please.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the village of Tuckahoe, we're honored to be here today. Mayor Wesner, he just stepped out for a moment, so we will be back. Again, thank you all for having us.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else from the village? Yes, please.
Trustee Luigi Marcoscia,
Marcoscia.
Gary Martin, and Sandy Quigley.
And our town supervisor, Tony Calamita.
I'm so close, I'll just come up. I'm delighted to be here this morning. I'm joined by Councilwoman Sheila Marcotte. Thank you, Sheila, for coming today. Also, our school board members, Willa Brody Thank you, Willa. John Cabaro. Eastchester High School Principal Jeff Capuano. Former Town Clerk Patty Dorwin. Former Westchester County Commissioner of Veteran Affairs Peter Iodice. And I also want to thank E.C.A.P for recognizing Alma Taylor, who was a wonderful lady, but you all know that. I don't have to repeat that. I'm glad you're doing something for her today. But the town of Eastchester also wanted to recognize the efforts of E.C.A.P over 25 years, celebrating this glorious day that is a national holiday in the United States of America. So thank you very much. Here's our proclamation recognizing E.C.A.P for the 25th annual Martin Luther King Jr. Breakfast. Thank you.
Well, among the other locals who are distinguished, I was going to mention my friend Peter Iodice, but I also, and I see I've lost my other friend, but not unknown to Tuckahoe, James Jubilee, former councilman in the city of Mount Vernon, original of Tuckahoe. He promised to come, and I'm sorry that the time came that we did not get to recognize him personally. The clergy. I saw Reverend Douglas here. Any other members of the clergy other than Reverend Taylor? Could you please stand and be recognized? Emmanuel. Okay. I want you to say your name really out loud. That's all. Any other members of the clergy? Any officers of churches? These are the people who are under the clergy, who keep things going. Do we have deacons and trustees, people of church, officers of the church? And finally, I didn't tell them I was going to do that because I know that they would try to stop me. But I would like for you to meet and see the members of the Eastchester Community Action Advisory Board. They are an outstanding group. I cannot tell you, we have done so many wonderful things so far with them. But at this time, while we are mentioning dignitaries, I would like for the members of the Eastchester Community Action Advisory Board to please stand. And finally, I think that we have another very distinguished guest, but Area Director Charlene Lambert will introduce her, and I'm sure we'll have some words by someone who's been a long time friend of mine. At this time, we would like for the members of the Alma Lee Taylor's family to please come up to the stage here. One of you will take the candle, please, stand at the center, and two of you hold the picture. This is absolutely fabulous. Is that a testimony to Alma Lee Taylor. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. You don't know where you're going until you know where you've been. The verses from James Weldon Johnson's Lift Every Voice and Sing provide inspiration for this tribute to Alma Lee Taylor, a tribute long overdue, but timely.
Darrell and Liz can testify to the fact that I felt that Alma Lee should have been able to smell the roses while she was here. But we know that she is feeling the aroma and the spirit that we are projecting to her today. And by the way, would members of Emmanuel please stand? Any of her church members, please stand, members. As long as I knew her, she was a fighter and a community activist, a foster parent, and a stylish personage. As I picture her, head always held high. She always looked taller than she was, elongating her stature, her steps always brisk and deliberate, strutting her stuff. I have visions of Alma's entrance and exits to the annual Mason's dances with her beloved Mickey right behind her. I have visions of her at E.C.A.P meetings, speaking her piece, rallying her causes, laying the groundwork along with Pauline and Willie Jones, David Kendick, and other pioneers who struggled to establish and maintain E.C.A.P. At that time it was called the CAP, and it was on Columbus Avenue. And if I'm not mistaken, the CAP building is where that luxury high-rise is found, that little storefront. Isn't that about where it was?
Master Bruno's
yes.
building.
I have visions of Alma on the dais in control of the early Martin Luther King breakfast, which she lovingly called Martha Luther King. I have visions of her at political gatherings and village board meetings, fighting for her rights as a citizen and a taxpayer, unafraid and politically savvy. Sing a song of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Through it all, Alma's presence has been felt, even today. We are here to thank her and to honor her. The Gospel song says it best for us. When I look back over my life and I think it all over, I can truly say that I've been blessed. I got a testimony. Today is a testimony to our beloved Alma Lee Taylor. Thank you for your love, your service, and the presence. Yes?
Can I just add something that a lot of people don't realize?
Please do anything.
Excuse me, but to the Taylor family standing before me here, I had the good pleasure of having all of them in school. And one of the things that you may not know about with Alma Lee, she didn't speak softly and just carry a big stick. She spoke out on behalf of her children, and more importantly, she had foster children in that house. And she raised others who've gone on to bigger and better things. Education was important to Alma Lee. And, you know, she's always in our hearts. Every time I look at her children, and I can go through story after story about each one of them having their ear pinched or whatever. But, you know, Alma Lee was truly what we call in Tuckahoe a community person. Not only with her God, her family, her neighbors, but others who were in need. And I just thought it important that you understand what she stood for and for whom we should be proud of at this moment. Thank you to the Taylor family and the George and the Downey family. Your mom was great.
So at this time, we light the candle. We're asking that you all stand. And just very briefly, Reverend Douglas, would you just come and offer a prayer as we say to Alma Lee, praise God, praise you, and thank you. Heads bowed, please.
Father God, oftentimes you present us with spirits that inspire us, with personages that teach us that if we emulate them in any way, we can achieve greater things. Such a person was Alma Lee Taylor. And so we come, even though you saw fit to take her home with you, that you've left her spirit with us, and we are truly grateful. Help us, God, in our own humble ways to strive to live the life that Alma did. Grant us this, and we promise to give you all the glory and all the praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Candle, and let's give Alma Lee.
morning, everyone. I want to just say thank you, and while we are in the mode of remembering, I thought it would only be appropriate to remember all who have served in whatever capacity that they have served E.C.A.P. This breakfast has been going on for 25 years, and so whether you sold a ticket, whether you fried up some eggs, whether you decorated the place, whether you were kind, whether you sang a song, read a poem, whether you were a donor, a volunteer, we want to acknowledge all who have served. So I'm going to ask Sister Cassie, Miss Cassie, we all go to church, so I might refer to her as Sister Cassie, to light the candle for all those who have gone on and have served diligently on behalf of E.C.A.P. And I'm going to ask all of the current members of E.C.A.P staff, as well as the friends and the board of directors, to stand as she lights the candle. What's important for us always to always remember that someone came before us, someone paved the way, someone took the time so that we can be here today. So we just wanted to take this time to acknowledge all those who have come and who have gone. And we want them to know that even though we know that God is telling them well done, we want them to know that we appreciated everything that they've done. Amen? Amen. While I'm here, I did have some very short closing remarks. I do want to acknowledge some special people who have took the time out to join us this day. I need to acknowledge Mr. Winston Ross, the Executive Director for Westchester Community Opportunity Program Incorporated. I'm also highly honored to have among us this day the newly elected chairman of the Board of Directors for Eastchester, for Westchester Co-op, the Honorable Lois Bronze.
I'm going to be very brief. I just want to say that this is my 25th year here. I was there when Willie Jones came to me and said he wanted to start this breakfast. And I said to him, you know, we do one in New Rochelle, and I don't want two things right at the same time. And he said, every community should honor Dr. Martin Luther King. And then he invited me to be the speaker. So I got to say that this is my 25th year being here, and time flies, and I'm glad you keep the spirit going.
Well, E.C.A.P is the proper venue for respect and honoring the Right Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I'd like to tell you a story about the other Dr. King. Somewhere in the late 50s, the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity was celebrating its founding in Ithaca, New York. Along with 5 other young married couples, I had the privilege of spending a week with Martin and Coretta. We were housed dormitory style, and we were all either immediately out of graduate school or still in graduate school. Martin was just loads of fun. He had jokes. He talked about the ladies. He teased us about what we were going to do. And of course, none of us knew that a day would come when he would try to change the world. It was an interesting gathering. We had Ernest Morial, who later became the first African-American mayor of the city of New Orleans. We had Edgar Taplin, who became the first African-American representative of Blue Cross Blue Shield. We had Lenny Burns, who later became the director of tourism for the state of Louisiana. But in that week on the campus, we were just fun-loving young married people getting to know each other. And none of us knew that we would forever be talking about the Right Reverend Martin Luther King. It's a precious memory and a very special segment of my life. And now, on the other side of the spectrum, Martin gave us a quote that defined what he thought we ought to be. He said, "We hate each other because we fear each other. We fear each other because we do not know each other. We do not know each other because we do not communicate. We do not communicate because we are separate." If we understand that, and we really appreciate the Right Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, then we have to reverse that quote. We cannot be separate, we must be together. If we are together, we will then learn to communicate. And if we communicate honestly and truthfully, then we will get to know each other. And if we know each other, then we will not fear each other. And if we do not fear each other, there will be no place in our lives for hate. Thank you.
Of Westchester. I've been privileged to serve with her. What she left out of that story was one last little bit. The first African-American female to be elected chair of the Westchester County Board of Legislators. Thank you for your service. She recently retired after so many years and went immediately back to work as president of the E.C.A.P Board of Directors.
We thank you for those kind and encouraging words. Again, I'm going to be brief. I do need to acknowledge the E.C.A.P staff. Ms. Geraldine Crumpton, who was here, she is our youth administrator. Ms. Mary Alexander is our receptionist. And I just also need to acknowledge that Ms. Alexander will be retiring. So I wanted to publicly thank her for her years of service to E.C.A.P, as well as volunteering and being a member of our Friends E.C.A.P, and for all that she has done. So if y'all could just oblige me and we can children, to everyone who participated on this program this day. I just wanted to also, if you have not gotten your raffle, the Friends E.C.A.P are going to be conducting the raffle shortly thereafter. We encourage you to do so now. And I'd like to acknowledge the Friends E.C.A.P that are in the house. Can you just stand up and wave your hand or something? And just so I will not be out of order, I must acknowledge my church family who has adopted E.C.A.P, and they have strongly supported everything that we've done. Covenant Life Christian Ministries of Oslo, New York, and the First Lady is here. Craig, you know I love you. And I love the way you keep it real.
Once again, thank you for being here. You've been patient, and I am going to be super brief. You just know we appreciate you. You continue, some of you have been to almost all of them going way back of the annual breakfast. In the last 2 years, this board has done, the E.C.A.P board, which is in many ways the right hand of E.C.A.P in terms of as an advisory on decisions and a primary fundraising institution. You have been to the Jazz and Soul, you've been to the Kevin Maynor. If you missed those concerts, don't. Write down May 14th at the Bronxville Women's Club. We're going to have a jazz cabaret concert at that time, and we're asking you, you'll hear from us, to support us. Thank you, each and every person in this room, all of you who sang and who tried to recite. But you know, you've been there, right? Let's give those little girls. I gave that to them yesterday. And to their credit, they wanted to memorize. And you know, as beautiful as you are, sometimes a lot of people out there can be daunting. So I love you, Jen. I love you, Jasmine. I love you, Brianna. Okay, and I know she's going to come back to announce Gina, but before we go, could we have a rousing thank you to our Mistress of Ceremony, Jackie McCray. Thank you, committee. The committee, the breakfast committee, thank you. And Jackie, are you going to announce this?
Before Gina comes, we're going to do the raffle. But I just wanted to add my little something about Mrs. Alma Lee Taylor. Before I moved to Tuckahoe 25 years ago, we lived in the Bronx, and as you know, I grew up in Mount Vernon. But after I met my husband, well, actually, the very first person I ever knew from Tuckahoe was Vivian Yancey. And I met her through my cousin many years ago. And I don't think we can have a breakfast without mentioning Vivian, so I want to mention Vivian Yancey. The second two people I met were Alma Lee Taylor and Louise Peterson, because they were good friends of my mother and father-in-law, Ed and Lucille McCray. And you know that my in-laws moved to Richmond years ago. And when my father-in-law passed, and well, I'm getting a lump in my throat, but when my father-in-law passed, and we looked up, who was coming through the door? But Alma Lee Taylor, Louise Peterson, Joe Yancey, and Martin Hampton. And they drove to Richmond, Virginia, came to the service, and turned around and drove back to Tuckahoe. And I think that's something. That says something for the people that they were and how they were friends back then. You know, when I came to Tuckahoe, people talked about my in-laws, and they talked about the Yanceys and the Taylors and the Petersons and fishing and all that kind of stuff. You know that stuff all y'all used to do. You know, they talked about all of that. But I just wanted to add my 2 cents to Mrs. Taylor. And then when I worked at the school, I got a chance to talk with her and speak with her over and over and over again about the students who were there. Because she was about discipline now. You wasn't going to mess up. She stayed on them. And you know, I don't know if you know, but she stayed on James Branch. You remember James? And right now, believe it or not, I have a Facebook account. And guess who contacted me through Facebook? James, he's in Maui. He lives in Hawaii, and I just thought that was something worth mentioning. Okay, now we're ready for our raffle. I said we're ready for our raffle. Who's gonna pick? Somebody else wants to buy? Woo, $20, y'all go get that. Hurry up, y'all move too slow. Go get that $20, girl. They're getting it now. You mean you don't get an arm's length for $20? You ought to get an arm and a leg for $20. I give them a long. And isn't that nice? He's giving them to the kids. I think that's wonderful. That's Mr. Urizo? Thank you, honey. When you gave his tickets to the kids. All right, are we ready now? We're almost ready. We're getting there. Hi, Terrell. You know you were there. How you doing? Let's throw him back there. I know that's your child. Mine too. All righty, we have our young man here who's going to pick. We just have one raffle prize? Okay. Take my glasses off to see. Okay, the winner is, the number is 754-306. 754-306. It's Vito. It should be Vito. He talked enough to get. And at this time, we're going to call up Gina Billups Pierce, who's going to sing for us America the Beautiful. After which we'll have our benediction by the Reverend Derek Taylor of the Village Lutheran Church in Bronxville. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience. And it's been my pleasure to serve you again as Mistress of Ceremony.
From sea to shining sea. Oh, beauty. Oh, patriot dreams that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam. I live by
there is a hymn written by Gene and Drew Adams, 2003, in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King, entitled Marching Strength. My name is Brother Martin. I have a dream today, a dream that someday, somewhere, all races shall be free. We look ahead for healing to put behind the past. We'll walk as sister and brother, and we will be free at last. I dreamed my little children will live within a world where they will not be judged by the color of their skin. I dreamed we'd work together. I dreamed let freedom ring. We'll learn to trust each other and then let peace begin. We're marching on for freedom and peace throughout the land. Wherever there's injustice, that's where we'll make our stand. From Colorado's mountains to every lake and sea, one dream, one hope, one vision. Oh, won't you walk with me? I may not get there with you. We're many miles to go. I will not fear the future. My Lord's with me, I know. The road will lead to heaven, where all the saints have trod, where black, white, brown, and yellow walk hand in hand with God. God bless you and keep you. Amen.